Good morning. Welcome to another edition of Breakfast News. Over the next 60 minutes, we'll get you all that matters from the world of politics, business, sports and entertainment. Also a big look at the vaccine story. India is going to begin its vaccine on Saturday, and also Trump being impeached for the second time. How does it move from the US House of Representatives to the Senate? Does he get impeached before he moves out and President-elect Joe Biden steps in? Lots to look forward to in the next 1 hour. This is your channel that gets you news based on facts. We cut the noise, get facts as it happens on the ground. And I'm Anil Thomas. With me this morning, my co-anchor Nancy Pelosi. Nancy, good morning.
Good morning, Anil. How are you doing this morning?
Feeling excited about the day.
Okay. And in fact, yes, these are the two big stories that we'll be focusing on throughout the next 1 hour, and more news from across the nation and the world. But first, a look at the headlines.
US House of Representatives vote in favor of impeachment of Donald Trump over Capitol violence. 10 Republican lawmakers vote for impeaching Trump. Donald Trump becomes the first president in the history of US to be impeached twice.
US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the House has demonstrated that no one is above the law, not even the President of the US. Trump condemns the Capitol violence in a video released on Twitter without mentioning the impeachment.
The nation gears up for the world's largest COVID-19 vaccination drive from the 16th of January. Health Minister says only pre-registered beneficiaries will be vaccinated as per their allotted schedule. Also says photo ID is mandatory at the vaccination site.
Makar Sankranti being celebrated across the country today. The festival marks the beginning of the northward movement of the sun. Kumbh Mela to begin in Haridwar from today.
And a team of international experts to arrive in the city of Wuhan today to investigate the source of early infections of COVID-19. The WHO expert team will visit was delayed due to a lack of authorization from the Chinese authorities.
And let's now move on, get you the news in detail. And first up, we are focusing on the vaccination, the biggest vaccination drive in the world. Welcome 16th of January. India will start the vaccination across the length and breadth of the country. It's an ambitious program and the world's biggest vaccination drive. And what's more, the two vaccines in question are both made in India. Let's take a look at this report.
This is the beginning of a decisive battle against COVID-19. On the 16th of January, the bugle will be blown, sounding the launch of a nationwide vaccination drive. This campaign to vaccinate a large part of India's 1.3 billion strong population will be the biggest ever in the world, and all preparations are nearing completion across the country. Consignments of vaccines manufactured in Pune and Hyderabad arrived in Kerala, Goa, Madhya Pradesh, Delhi, Jharkhand on Wednesday.
सुव्यवस्थित ढंग से संचालित करने के लिए हमने मेन जो रखा है सुपरविजन मॉनिटरिंग सिस्टम। तो हमारी जो वैक्सीनेशन सेंटर ऐसे जगहों पे होगा, मेडिकल कॉलेज, जिला अस्पताल, सब हमारा सब डिस्ट्रिक्ट हॉस्पिटल, तो उसमें हमारी पूरी डॉक्टरी व्यवस्था भी रहेगी, जिससे हम उनके पर्यवेक्षण के अंतर्गत ये टीकाकरण करें। तो हम एक योजना है और राज्य स्तर से आज पूरे प्रदेश को वो योजना दे दी जाएगी, उसके अनुरूप टीकाकरण होगा।
Consignments of the vaccine reached Tripura's Agartala. They will be sent to 15 centers across 8 districts. In Uttar Pradesh, the first consignment of 85,000 doses for 14 districts of Purvanchal reached Varanasi, while 27 boxes were successfully delivered to a storage house in Chhattisgarh's Raipur.
ये जो पूरी प्रक्रिया है ये तकनीक पर आधारित है, आईटी पर आधारित है, सूचना प्रौद्योगिकी पर आधारित है. Orderly, smooth implementation driven by technology, and also development of a digital platform to track not only the movement of vaccines but also the movement of beneficiaries who have been vaccinated.
The first batch of 16,50,000 doses of indigenous vaccine Covaxin successfully reached 11 cities in the country from Hyderabad. The centre has demanded a total of 5.5 million doses from Bharat Biotech. The company has 20 doses in a vial, while Serum Institute's Covishield has 10 doses per vial. Both the vaccines are being provided free of cost to health and frontline workers across the country in the first round. On Saturday, India will join 50 countries in the world where immunization has started. A 3-phase dry run was done before the campaign kicks off. Meanwhile, the tech platform to run the drive, CoWIN, was tested for technology-based monitoring and data clarity. India has played a leading role in the battle against COVID-19, the worst global pandemic since the Spanish flu in 1918. While 2 vaccines have been approved for emergency use in India and inoculation is set to start, 4 other vaccines are also in final phases of testing and development. With Bureau Input, DD India.
While dismissing reports alleging discrimination on allocation of vaccine doses as totally baseless, the Ministry of Health Affairs said that there is no question of discrimination against any state in allocation of vaccine doses. In a series of tweets, the Health Ministry said that the full initial procurement of 1.65 crore doses of Covishield and Covid vaccine have been allotted to all states and union territories in proportion of the healthcare workers database. Therefore, there is no question of discrimination against any state in allocation of vaccine doses. This is the initial lot of supply of vaccine doses and would be continuously replenished in the weeks to come. Therefore, any apprehensions being expressed on account of deficient supply is totally baseless and unfounded. States have been advised to organize vaccination sessions taking into account 10% reserve wastage doses and an average of 100 vaccination sessions in a day. Therefore, any undue haste on the part of the states to organize unreasonable number of vaccinations per site per day is not advised. The states and union territories have also been advised to increase the number of vaccination session sites that would be operational every day in a progressive manner as the vaccination process stabilizes and moves forward.
Now, with just 2 days to go for the beginning of the world's largest COVID-19 immunization program, the Union Health Minister Dr. Haridwar has clarified some frequently asked questions for all to stay informed and staying safe. First of all, there will be no provision for on-the-spot COVID-19 vaccination registration at the session sites, so only pre-registered COVID-19 vaccine beneficiaries will be vaccinated as per the allotted date, time and schedule. Second, it's mandatory to carry the photo ID used at the time of the COVID-19 vaccine registration to the COVID-19 vaccination site in order to get the vaccine, so no person will be vaccinated if he or she fails to present the photo ID used at the time of registration at the session site. The Health Minister also informed about the list of photo IDs that are needed to register on the CoWIN app. Now, some of these IDs include the passport, driving license, PAN card, Aadhaar card, voter ID, besides others listed. Let's go across now to our correspondent Tapash Bhattacharya, who's joining us with more updates as far as the world's biggest vaccination drive that's going to begin 2 days from now is concerned. Tapash, good morning. Of course,
very good morning, Nancy.
We've been giving a sense to our viewers as to the preparations that have been put in place, the roadmap that has been laid, for the big day up ahead. Just put this into perspective for us, what this really means for the entire country. Now, India, in fact, also joining other countries who have already begun the immunization program, the vaccination drive.
Right, so Nancy, we do have a universal immunization program in place, as we've been doing pulse polio program and other such immunization program over the years. But this is definitely one of the biggest vaccination program, not just in the country. Obviously, it is definitely one of the biggest in the country, but also in the world. In fact, the way India will move forward on 16th and then thereafter, it will also be a precursor to the world how to go about it, about vaccination program, and it will be India will be leading by example to the whole world about exactly that. So the world will be waited with a bated breath to understand that in a country of a size, of a magnitude of India,
Sure.
how they manage to come across and inoculate and vaccinate a population of more than 1 billion population. So in that sense, this is another. It's going to be a Herculean task, but the government and the state machinery are all set, all geared up for that. Now we have been told that in the first, from 16, there will be 3,000 centers all over the country which will be administering the vaccines. And it is expected the number of centers will increase in the 2 weeks' time to 5,000.
Okay.
And by the end of March, we've been told that it is going to increase to more than 12,000. So in that sense, the government is very clear that in a staggered manner, the number of centers will be increased. The number of shots at each center at one particular day will be 100, and there will be at least 5 vaccinate the team. There will be a team of 5 people, including one vaccinator who will be there to administer the vaccine. So overall, the system has been put in place. They're starting with a staggered manner in a sense to understand, to get a idea about how things are going to be done. And as the time progresses, they're going to increase and ramp up their vaccination program in due course of time. Nancy.
Okay. All right, Tapash, thanks very much for joining us for the moment. That important day up ahead for all of us clearly, and the nuances of that day is something that needs to be carefully looked into as far as making it a big success. The vaccination drive that takes place on the 16th of this month. Thanks, Tapash, for joining us and sharing all those details.
Well, moving to the next story, the Cabinet Committee on Security on Wednesday approved the largest indigenous defence procurement deal. It would strengthen the Indian Air Force's fleet of the homegrown fighter jet Tejas. The Cabinet, chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, approved procurement of 73 light combat aircraft Tejas Mark 1A fighter jets and 10 LCA, that's light combat aircraft Tejas Mark 1 trainer aircraft at a cost of more than 45,000 crore rupees. It has also given nod to the design and development of infrastructure worth another 1,200 crore rupees. It is the first quote-unquote by Indian indigenously designed, developed and manufactured category purchase of combat aircraft with an indigenous content of 50%. It would progressively reach 60% by the end of the program. The Cabinet also approved infrastructure development by the Indian Air Force to enable them to handle repair and service at their base depot so that the turnaround time is reduced for mission critical systems. Doing so would lead to increased availability of aircraft for operational exploitation. This would enable the Indian Air Force to sustain the fleet more efficiently and effectively due to availability of repair infrastructure at respective bases. About 500 Indian companies, including MSMEs in the design and manufacturing sectors, would be working with Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, that's HAL, in this regard.
And Prime Minister Modi has tweeted on the largest indigenous defence procurement deal. He said the cabinet decision will improve the capabilities of our armed forces, boost the indigenous defence industry and strengthen the movement to create an Atmanirbhar Bharat, unquote.
Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has termed the historic deal as a game changer for self-reliance in the Indian defence manufacturing. In a series of tweets, he said the light combat aircraft Tejas is going to be the backbone of the Indian Air Force fighter fleet in the years to come. LCA Tejas incorporates a large number of new technologies, many of which were never attempted in India. The Hindustan Aeronautics Limited has already set up the second-line manufacturing facilities at its Nasik and Bengaluru divisions. Equipped with the augmented infrastructure with HAL, will steer the light combat aircraft Mark 1A production for timely deliveries to the Indian Air Force. The decision taken will considerably expand the current light combat aircraft ecosystem and help in creating new job opportunities. HAL follows a system integrator model in light combat aircraft Mark 1A program and acts as an umbrella organization fostering manufacturing and design capabilities in the private industry. LCA Tejas program would act as a catalyst for transforming the Indian aerospace manufacturing ecosystem into a vibrant Atmanirbhar self-sustaining ecosystem.
The Union Cabinet on Wednesday approved a memorandum of understanding on the scientific and technical cooperation between the National Centre of Meteorology of the UAE and India's Ministry of Earth Sciences. The MOU is about sharing of knowledge, data and operational products for meteorological, seismological and oceanic services such as radar, satellite, tide gauges, seismic and met stations. It could also help improve our understanding of the changing weather patterns. The collaboration on the multi-hazard early warning system and the climate resilience could also contribute to economic growth in the region.
Well, the 51st International Film Festival of India, beginning at Goa from the 16th of January, will pay a tribute to the late filmmaker Satyajit Ray. Information and Broadcasting Secretary Amit Khare has made the announcement during the Golden Jubilee edition of IFFI in 2019 as part of the centenary celebrations of Satyajit Ray. IFFI will showcase the films Charu Lata 1964, Ghare Bhaire 1984, Patra Panchali 1955, Shatranj Ke Khiladi 1977 and Sonar Khela 1974.
And to celebrate 100 years of Satyajit Ray, DD India and Doordarshan News will soon broadcast the program titled Cinema Centurion Satyajit Ray.
Satyajit Ray, the iconic filmmaker. A quintessential humanist, gave cinema's most memorable moments.
চেষ্টা তো করি আমার বিশ্বাস দুজনেই পাবো
Satyajit Ray, a master of world cinema.
কি ব্যাপার
দেখো
Celebrating 100 years of Satyajit Ray, Cinema Centurion Satyajit Ray, coming soon only on DD India and DD News.
Well, nation celebrates the festival of Makar Sankranti today. The festival, also called Maghu or Sankranti, is a festival day of Hindu calendar dedicated to the deity Surya. It is known as Makar-Valikku in Kerala. The state will witness the climax of this year's pilgrimage with the Makar-Valikku festival, when Makar-Valikku is lit and the pilgrims witness the Makar Jyoti star in full devotion. The presiding deity, Lord Ayyappa, will be adorned with Tirubharana, the sacred ornaments brought from Pandalam Palace, which is believed to be his ancestral home. Then devotees will witness the Makar Jyoti and receive the blessings, marking the culmination of this year's pilgrimage.
The major Hindu harvest festival of Makar Sankranti is being celebrated across the country today. Makar Sankranti is an ideal illustration of solidarity in diversity. Now, each state in India has different ways of observing Makar Sankranti. However, the theme, the harvest season, is the combining factor. On this day, the sun god is worshipped, offered praise and gratitude. The devotees also worship Lord Vishnu and Goddess Lakshmi on the occasion of Makar Sankranti. And on the account of COVID-19 pandemic, usual festivities and celebrations like kite flying, taking dips in the holy rivers like Ganga and Yamuna, visiting the near and dear ones may not be the wisest choice. However, one can always celebrate while practicing social distancing, wearing masks and sending virtual wishes and the messages to your loved ones. The Kumbh Mela will also begin in Haridwar from today.
Well, now let's move on to our next segment on health. Well, pneumonia is more prevalent in winter months. It may have severe impact in young children and elderly population. Let's take a look at this report to understand the ways that can help prevent this condition.
Pneumonia comes in as a major health risk in winters, especially for those with low immunity, including young children and elderly.
Pneumonia is a disease which is involving the respiratory system of your body. It can occur because of exposure to bacteria and viruses. During winter time, this disease increases because of the change in temperature. All kinds of flu fever or viral fevers can produce pneumonia, pain chest, cough and fever. Some of the patients may not have all the symptoms, and even at the beginning of any kind of a symptom, like increase in your coughing when you are already having a chronic respiratory illness, or if you have only fever and your respiratory rate increases, immediately contact your doctor.
People with underlying lung disease like asthma or bronchitis are more likely to develop complications in pneumonia.
You may need some investigations, which are some blood tests in forms of getting your counts done, getting a chest X-ray done, and to prove the diagnosis of pneumonia. Take appropriate therapy, and that includes antibiotics mainly. But my suggestion is, do not take antibiotics on suggestion from your local chemist or by hearing it from our local friend or anyone. Consult a doctor before you start treating pneumonia. Other chronic illnesses like diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, you should also make a venture that attempt that you take vaccination, especially for flu every year. Take proper care of putting on woolen clothes properly. Do not go for exercise during early morning or late evening. Also avoid traveling in crowded places.
It is important to identify and treat pneumonia timely to prevent complications. Kiran Bhardwaj, DD News.
And with that, let's move on now to our next segment to get you all the news from around the world in across the globe. And the big story, the US House of Representatives on late Wednesday approved the impeachment motion against US President Donald Trump. During the voting on Trump's impeachment motion in the House of Representatives, 232 votes were cast in favor of the motion and 197 in the opposition. While surprisingly, 10 MPs of President Trump's Republican Party also voted in favor of the motion. With this, Trump has become the first president in the American history to be impeached twice, formally charging him with inciting mob violence besieged at the Capitol Hills. The impeachment motion against Donald Trump was drafted by MPs Jamie Raskin, David Cicilline and Ted Lieu. The motion accuses the president for inciting supporters to sedition. It added that Trump encouraged his supporters to lay siege to the Capitol building when the Electoral College votes were counting and the process was disrupted as people attacked. 5 people, including a police officer, were killed in the incident. And the emotional impeachment debate conducted with extraordinary security unfolded with passionate arguments from both the sides. Some Republicans argue that the impeachment drive was a rush to judgment that bypassed the customary deliberative process, including hearings, and called on the Democrats to abandon the effort for the sake of national unity.
Most Americans want neither inaction nor retribution. They want durable, bipartisan justice. That path is still available, but is not the path we are on today. That doesn't mean the president is free from fault. The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters. He should have immediately denounced the mob when he saw what was unfolding. These facts require immediate action by President Trump. Accept his share of responsibility. Quell the brewing unrest. And the president's immediate action also deserves congressional action, which is why I think a fact-finding commission and a censure resolution would be prudent.
Today we invoke the remedy the founders provided for just such a lawless president, impeachment. More important, today we begin the long road to restoration. America has been through a civil war, world wars, a Great Depression, pandemics, McCarthyism, and now a Trumpist and white nationalist insurrection. And yet our democracy endures. It endures because at every juncture, every pivotal moment, when evil threatened to overtake good, patriotic Americans step forward to say enough. This is one of those moments. To preserve this sacred place, this citadel of democracy for ourselves and for posterity, let us say enough.
The U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi signed the enforcement of the article of impeachment against President Trump that her chamber passed earlier in the day. The article now will go to the Senate for an impeachment trial. Now, after Trump's impeachment, the U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said that in a bipartisan way, the U.S. House has demonstrated that no one is above the law, not even the President of the U.S.
And we know that the President of the United States incited this insurrection, this armed rebellion against our common country. He must go. He is a clear and present danger to the nation that we all love. And then came that day of fire we all experienced. The President must be impeached, and I believe the President must be convicted by the Senate, a constitutional remedy that will ensure that the Republic will be safe from this man who was so resolutely determined to tear down the things that we hold dear and that hold us together.
Meanwhile, President Trump released a video on Twitter where he did not mention impeachment. Instead, Trump focused his remarks on the violence at the Capitol, which ultimately led to the House of Representatives to impeach him for the incitement of insurrection, saying, "I unequivocally condemn the violence and the vandalism have absolutely no place in our country and no place in our movement," unquote.
Whether you are on the right or on the left, a Democrat or a Republican, there is never a justification for violence. No excuses, no exceptions. America is a nation of laws. Those who engaged in the attacks last week will be brought to justice. Every American deserves to have their voice heard in a respectful and peaceful way. That is your First Amendment right. But I cannot emphasize that there must be no violence, no law breaking, and no vandalism of any kind. Everyone must follow our laws and obey the instructions of law enforcement.
Now, post-impeachment of President Trump by the U.S. House of Representatives, all eyes are now on the Senate. If the Senate also passes impeachment resolution, then President Trump has to leave the post. But in Senate, Republican has 50 votes, while Democrats have 51 votes. Now, two-thirds majority in the Senate is needed to pass the resolution, which seems tough until some more Republicans vote against Trump. Meanwhile, security has been beefed up near Vice President Mike Pence's house as well as the Capitol Hills post Trump's impeachment by the House. As many as 15,000 National Guard troops, including some armed members, have been ordered to Washington to secure the city before the U.S. President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration, with new fencing and other security measures engulfing the U.S. Capitol area. And let's now go across to our correspondent joining us from San Francisco in the U.S., Ira Spitzer, joining us here on the broadcast. Ira, just take us through the possible scenarios now that one can look at after the House has, of course, impeached Trump and just days before he's scheduled to leave the office.
Well, certainly a historic day in Washington. Trump is now, well, he was already the fourth U.S. president to be impeached, and now he is the first president to ever in history be impeached twice. That was the dramatic events of the day in the U.S. Congress, which resulted, of course, in that impeachment, resulted in 10 Republican Congresspeople defecting from their party, so to speak, and also voting to impeach Donald Trump. So now the impeachment trial goes to the other house of Congress, the U.S. Senate. And there, if 2/3 of the Senate votes to remove Donald Trump, then that is what would happen. Now, of course, this will certainly be after Donald Trump leaves office, so it would be sort of a removal after the fact, but nonetheless, certainly an extremely significant situation unfolding, of course, given what we saw at the Capitol just a week ago with those pro-Trump loyalists. So now possible repercussions for that coming.
Mr. Spitzer, considering that, the Senate is not going to sit before the 19th, what's the point in having an impeachment for a former president?
Well, that's a great question, and that's a question that certainly many in the United States are asking. But what else could Congress do here? Impeachment is really the only option that they have beyond the 25th Amendment, which would have removed him immediately, which was rejected just yesterday. So now impeachment really becomes the tool that they have to punish Donald Trump for what happened at the U.S. Capitol. So yes, it could certainly distract from the business of running the country for the president-elect Joe Biden. Yes, it could tie up the Senate, but there are many people, certainly Democrats in Congress, who believe that this is what needs to happen to hold Donald Trump accountable for the violence at the U.S. Capitol.
Okay. Ira, how are things really different now? The Senate will now hold a trial, and that had happened in 2019 as well when he was impeached. But then it was a Republican majority there at the Senate, and he was acquitted. Now the Senate is in recess and not scheduled to resume until 19th January. So how really things are different this time around?
Right. So, well, as you mentioned, the last time Donald Trump was impeached, there was a Republican majority in the Senate. That has now changed. The Democrats have a majority by just one senator in the U.S. Senate. However, that majority is not even enough to convict Donald Trump because you need a 2/3 majority. Right. So the hope for Democrats is that Republicans will cross the aisle and vote to remove Donald Trump, to convict Donald Trump. There are signs that that is possible. The Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell indicating that he's not happy with Trump, but it still will be hard to get 17 Republican senators to switch sides, which is what they kind of need to have happen here.
Okay.
Mr. Spitzer, when you look at President Trump, he looks down, but do you get the sense that he's out, or there is still some something left in Trump to come back and stage a comeback?
Well, I would say that based on the polling numbers out there, that Donald Trump is still relatively popular, or very popular among Republicans. There was a recent poll which showed him at around 70% support among Republicans. So he remains the most powerful person in that party, despite the impeachment, despite the situation in Congress. So at least among Republican voters, Trump is very powerful. However, that is one of the reasons why Republicans may want to get rid of him now once and for all, because of his power and the hold that he has on that party. That's something that many people in the Republican Party also are scared of, also don't like. So he can come back, but maybe if he's removed from office officially here, if he's convicted, that could become more difficult for Donald Trump.
Okay. And, focusing a bit on the timing of the trial there by the Senate, could that take place before Biden is inaugurated? Any indications on that?
We've pretty much learned that that is not going to happen. The Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, ruling that out. He has some say in when that process would start, and certainly there's no way that a proper trial, or it's very difficult to imagine a proper trial taking place in just a week. So the idea, as I understand it, is to wait for the new Congress to take their seats, and then the impeachment trial of Donald Trump will begin shortly thereafter.
Mr. Spitzer, when you look at, Donald Trump becomes the first president to be impeached twice, but how would, American history look at Donald Trump now?
Well, American history right now is tilted very much against Donald Trump, given sort of the chaos of the past 4 years, given the chaos, what we saw last week. If he were to be impeached twice and ultimately convicted by the Senate, he would certainly go down, I think, as one of the worst presidents in American history, if not the worst by a lot of people.
Okay. 3 U.S. presidents have been impeached, but no one has ever been tried by the Senate after leaving office. And some constitutional, scholars, they argue that an ex-president cannot really be tried by the Senate. What can you share with us on that?
Well, because it hasn't happened yet, there is not a precedent for what actually happens if he is convicted. I can say that the trial is certainly going to go ahead. But if the Senate were to vote on, for instance, Trump not being allowed to run again, that is something that Donald Trump could appeal to the Supreme Court, for example, because there's not really a precedent in American history or American law for doing this sorts of thing. We're really in uncharted territory right now.
Okay.
Also, how would you look at it? A Senate trial, does that make the situation pretty odd or pretty awkward for Joe Biden?
Yeah, I think Joe Biden probably, this is not what he was hoping for in his first month in office. It really distracts, I think, from his agenda. It puts the attention back on Donald Trump. Of course, Trump has had so much attention from the media, from the public for the past 4 years, and many were looking forward to having Donald Trump out of the news. Well, of course, with this impeachment trial in the Senate, he's going to be once again front and center in the first weeks of the Joe Biden administration.
Sure. Of course, 2/3 majority is needed of the senators there present, needed to convict president would also mean at least 17 Republicans would have to join the Democrats to vote for conviction.
Right, so that is the case, that they would need these defections from 17 Republicans. There are certainly a few Republicans who are expected to vote for impeachment. I think there's about 5 of those 17 that would likely go over to that side. Mitt Romney, the senator from Utah, voted for impeachment last time, so I'm pretty sure he's going to vote for impeachment again. But then even after those 5, that leaves another 12 votes in the Senate, and I think that really depends on kind of the institutional power on Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader. If he says, okay, I'm done with Trump, I'm voting for removal, for conviction here, I think we could perhaps see other Republican senators join Mitch McConnell in that effort. So a lot hinges on the Senate Majority Leader right now.
Okay, what does this particular impeachment, what does it mean for Trump? What does it mean for President-elect Joe Biden? And what does it mean for America on a whole?
Well, I think for Donald Trump, it certainly will impact his legacy and also his political future. Right now, he would be, I think, the favorite for the Republican presidential nomination in 2024. So if he's removed from office, that would limit his ability to run again. For Joe Biden, it's a chance to put the Trump era officially behind us and to move on. Joe Biden, I think, would of course would prefer that Donald Trump is convicted in the Senate. And for America, it's a reckoning for this very divisive, very chaotic 4 years of the Trump presidency. The public remains divided on how they view Mr. Trump's legacy. So I think the impeachment trial will be another sort of chapter in this long process of coming to terms with the Donald Trump presidency and the Donald Trump era.
Sure. Talking about his position at this moment, because unlike first time, would you say that he faces impeachment this time as a weakened leader, having lost the re-elections and, as well as of the Senate Republican majority as well? So weakened position there of Donald Trump.
Right. He is in a weakened position right now. He's losing lots of political friends. Of course, many people never liked him that much in the first place, but needed to stick by him because he was the president. Well, we know that he's not going to be the president in a week, so people are starting to distance themselves from the president. We've heard reports of him somewhat isolated in the White House, and now he's, of course, had his social media accounts largely cut off as well. So Donald Trump is a weakened animal in a lot of ways, but on the other sense, the attention is still firmly focused on him, on his every move. He released a video earlier today that was the biggest news of the day, perhaps I wouldn't say overshadowing the impeachment trial, but it did make a big impact. We all watched it. So Donald Trump remains the president, remains very influential, and that could be a problem for everybody when they try to think about whether they're going to vote to convict him. What his supporters will think about that.
Okay, with regards to the discussion that took place in the House of Representatives, what's the sense that, a majority of the leaders spoke about? Was the Capitol riots more spontaneous or was it accidental? What's the feeling that you picked?
Well, it really depends on who you listen to. Listening to Nancy Pelosi and basically all of the Democrats, the blame was squarely laid directly at the feet of Donald Trump, saying, he lit the match that allowed all those people to march to the Capitol and feel like this was what they had to do. It was his fraudulent claims of a stolen election which led to this violence. So that was the Democrats' argument. But then what you heard from many Republicans was this idea of a double standard. The fact that, they say, oh, well, there's these protests and riots in other cities by Antifa activists or Black Lives Matter activists, and saying, okay, there's violence on both sides, and sort of trying to say that this is unfair to pin this all on Donald Trump. So it really depends on who you ask.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much, Mr. Ira Spitzer, for joining us and sharing all those insights and developments, perspective there as far as Trump's impeachment there is concerned. We'll keep tracking all those developments. The big stories coming in from there for the moment. Thanks very much, though.
Well, that's a big story there. Donald Trump being impeached for a second time, and impeachment. What does that put Trump in, especially when it comes to American people? But clearly, polls indicating that he still is a favorite, especially when it comes to numbers within the Republican Party, and many Republican MPs still backing Donald Trump to the hilt. We'll have to wait and watch how this particular story plays out in the future, and we'll give you all the updates as it unfolds.
But we're moving on now to some other news and talking about the COVID-19 numbers from across the world there. The virus has in fact infected over 9,27,19,000 people, while 6,62,46,980 have recovered so far worldwide. The number of lives lost due to COVID-19 is above 19,84,900. The virus continues to batter the US the most, where more than 2,35,90,480 cases have been registered. Over 3,93,000 fatalities have been recorded in the US due to COVID-19, followed by Brazil, which has 2,06,000.
A team of WHO experts will land directly in Wuhan today, starting their long-delayed probe into COVID-19 and the virus epicenter. The 10 scientists will investigate the origins of the new virus in a mission that comes more than a year after the pandemic began. The team will undergo quarantine when they reach Wuhan in central Hubei province, from where they will communicate with Chinese medical experts by video. The World Health Organization team will leave from Singapore and fly straight to Wuhan, the central city where the first cluster of cases was detected in December 2019. WHO Chief Tedros Ghebreyesus said that the organization looks forward to working with China on the mission to identify the source of the virus and how it entered the human population.
Now, as the US plans to ramp up its vaccination drive against COVID-19, New York has turned the Jacob K. Javits Convention Center into a COVID-19 vaccination center with the ability to vaccinate 10,000 people in a 12-hour period. The US federal officials have agreed to send states additional COVID-19 vaccine doses requested by several governors. The US Food and Drug Administration has authorized the vaccine from Pfizer and partner BioNTech and a second vaccine from Moderna for emergency use. More than 10 million Americans had already been given their first COVID-19 vaccination, and as per the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, less than one-third of the 25 million total doses have been distributed to the states so far.
Russian Chumakov Research Center and Development of Immune and Biological Products is all set to apply for state registration of its vaccine, while the verdict by the Health Ministry is expected in February. The vaccine developed by the center uses a traditional approach when a patient gets a shot of the dead virus part to start the production of antibodies. Such an approach was the reason the start of the vaccine development took longer than its counterparts. Chumakov Center vaccine is currently undergoing phase 2 of clinical trials, which would show its efficiency. Russia has already developed two COVID-19 vaccines, Sputnik V and Epivac Corona. The country has cases standing about 34,71,100 and fatalities over 63,300.
Now, Turkey will roll out COVID-19 vaccine from today, shortly after giving approval to China's Sinovac vaccine. The country focuses on providing the vaccine shots to health workers and to people above 65 years of age first. The third group will include young adults and some other categories, with a fourth group covering the rest. The vaccines have been distributed to the public health storage facilities in all of Turkey's 81 provinces. Turkey has ordered 50 million doses of Sinovac vaccine, out of which it has received 3 million doses. Turkey, having more than 23,55,000 cases of COVID-19, has imposed nighttime curfew to control the soaring cases of COVID-19.
Well, Portugal will impose a new lockdown from Jan 15 to tackle the growing cases of COVID-19 in the country. Portugal's Prime Minister Antonio Costa has urged people to stay indoors and protect themselves. The Prime Minister also said that the rules will be similar to the 6-week lockdown imposed between March and April last year during the first wave of the pandemic, except all schools, public and private, will stay open. However, restrictions on movement will be eased on the day of Portugal presidential election scheduled on Jan 24th. Portugal has over 507,000 cases of COVID-19, while more than 8,200 lives have been lost so far due to the pandemic.
Now, anger stirred up among the health workers in Peru, with many of them walking off the job, calling for a hike in their remunerations to bolster the country's COVID-19 hit health sector. The protesting doctors, nurses and other health workers are on indefinite strike. The strikers say they have sought talks with the health ministry on the matter but have not been satisfied with the government's response. Some hospitals are operating with skeletal numbers of health workers. The strike comes as the country tightens up mobility restrictions to tackle the further spread of COVID-19 in the Andean nation, with the government announcing that a new wave of infections has begun.
Well, after a look at all that's happening across the globe, it's time now to take a look at what's making news in the world of sports in our segment Sports Track. Well, at the Wankhede Stadium on Wednesday, Mohammad Azharuddin became the first T20 centurion for Kerala as he hammered a 37-ball ton to guide the team to a convincing win against host Mumbai. The seasoned campaigner, who has been in the circuit for the last 6 years, surpassed Rohan Prem's previous top score of 92 not out and ensured that Kerala remain undefeated in the Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy. While he toyed with the Mumbai bowlers en route to a 137 of 54 deliveries, the Kerala camp looked excited with Azharuddin's feat. The wicketkeeper batsman Azharuddin made it to Kerala's first-class side in 2015 and has been a consistent performer since then.
Now, in the English Premier League, Manchester City returned to the Premier League with a nervy 1-0 win over Brighton. City are looking to keep in touch with the top of the Premier League table after Manchester United moved 3 points clear last night. Manchester City extended their unbeaten run to 14 matches in all the competitions with a hard-fought win. The Blues have 2 games in hand over United and Liverpool, and their next 6 week fixtures are favourable compared to the top 2, who face each other on Sunday. Now, City's 4th straight win in the league moved them up to the 3rd. Brighton, meanwhile, have now not won in 9 league matches and are just 2 points ahead of the 18th place Fulham, who have 2 games in hand. Brighton will be searching for only their 3rd league win of the season when they play at Leeds on Saturday. This was the 2nd of 4 home matches in a row for Manchester City, and they host Crystal Palace in the Premier League on Sunday. Fulham's fury at having to play Tottenham with just 2 days' notice was shown to be misplaced as it came from behind to draw 1-1 in the Premier League on Wednesday night. After Tottenham's game with Aston Villa was postponed, the Premier League quickly rearranged this match against Fulham, which was originally due to be played on 30 December, and manager Scott Parker described the decision as scandalous. Tottenham dominated the first half and led through Harry Kane's 25th minute. Diving header, but a spirited second half showing from Fulham was rewarded with Ivan Cavaliero's equaliser 16 minutes from time, earning its 5th successive draw.
Well, after a look at sports, it's time now to take a jog down memory lane and take a look at all the important events that took place on this very day in history, 14th of January.
On this day in 1742, Edwin Halley, an English astronomer who calculated the orbit of the comet now called Halley's Comet, died in Greenwich. On this day in 1761, the Third Battle of Panipat was fought between the Marathas and the forces of the Afghan ruler Ahmad Shah Abdali. The battle is considered to be one of the largest fought in the 18th century and has perhaps the largest number of fatalities in a single day reported in a classic formation battle between two armies. On this day in 1926, Indian writer and social activist Mahashweta Devi was born in Dhaka. And on this day in 1964, Indian bowler Ramesh Chandra Gangaram Nadkarni made a unique record in international cricket. He set a record for throwing 21 consecutive maiden overs in Test cricket.
And let's now move on to our next segment, get you all the news from around the World Wide Web in a segment web review. And let's now go across to our colleague Meghna.
Hello Nancy, good morning. Anil and Nancy, let's begin with our web news review segment. Taking the news from Money Control first, Signal has ramped up. The Signal app has ramped up hiring after the WhatsApp controversy has driven the download surge. Now there has been an online outrage after WhatsApp has required users to share data with both Facebook and Instagram. And after that, there has been an unprecedented growth in the messaging app Signal. And Signal has started hiring more people. Now Signal is also working to improve its video and group chats so that it is at par with the other apps. And there have been 17.8 million users increased in the past 7 days, and it results to around a 62-fold rise from the prior week. So definitely an unprecedented growth in the Signal app because of the outrage that is due to the WhatsApp controversy, the privacy policy. Moving on to the next is also a similar story from The Hindu, and this is for the Telegram app, which has crossed the 500 million subscriber mark, which has been led by user additions from Asia. And if we look at the data which has been provided in the report, between January 6 to January 10, there has been an increase of about 1.5 million new downloads from the country itself. And the Telegram CEO has said that it has become the largest refuge for those people who are looking for communication platforms which has been committed or which is committed to privacy and security as well. Moving on to the next story from The Hindu, BSF has detected a 150-meter trans-border tunnel along the international border in Jammu and Kashmir's Kathua, and this is the third tunnel that has been unearthed along the international borders in the twin districts of Samba and Kathua. And this is, the tunnel basically was unearthed during a patrolling operation, which was an anti-tunneling patrolling operation. Moving on to the next story from Hindustan Times, we have been seeing from the past few days several web portals reporting news on the bird flu issue, on avian influenza. This story is for Uttar Pradesh, which has banned the import of birds and poultry till January 24th, and there has been, the report states that there has been no sample bearing Kanpur Zoo that have been found positive, but definitely the testing for avian influenza has been ramped up, and the sampling is being done and the testing is being conducted in Uttar Pradesh. Moving on to the next story, which is the last. This is about Jallikat in the times of the pandemic, and this year the Jallikat provides the promises to be different, not only due to the COVID-19 protocols, but this time around there are more first-timers that are participating in the sport, and these first-timers have basically come up because of their practice during the lockdown, and the participants and bull owners, especially because of the COVID-19 protocols, have to take tests before a couple of days before the event, and the seating this time will also be a bit spaced out, so it will definitely be a different kind of Jallikat event that we'll be witnessing this time. So that's all from the web news review. Back to the studios to Anil and Nancy.
Well, thank you, Meghna, for those updates there from the World Wide Web. But let's now take a look at the weather through the satellite image, also temperatures in your city. Well, due to the prevalence of dry northwestwardly winds, minimum temperatures very likely to remain below normal over most parts of northwest India during the next 2 to 3 days. Hence, a cold day, severe cold day conditions very likely to continue over many pockets over Punjab and Haryana, Chandigarh and Delhi, and in some pockets of Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand during the next 2 days. Cold wave, severe cold wave conditions very likely in many pockets over Punjab, Haryana, Chandigarh, Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, in some pockets of East Rajasthan and isolated pockets of West Rajasthan during the next 2 to 3 days. Ground frost very likely in isolated pockets over Uttarakhand, Punjab, Haryana, Chandigarh, West Uttar Pradesh and North Rajasthan during the next 24 hours. Dense to very dense fog conditions in isolated places over northwest India over the next 4 to 5 days. So it's going to be a longer thing, especially weather warnings, thunderstorm accompanied with lightning at very few places over Lakshadweep, and squally weather over Southeast Arabian Sea, Lakshadweep, and fishermen being advised not to venture into the sea. Well, now let's take a look at the temperatures in your city. Well, it's time where we are going to end the show, but we've got a campaign running for you that's called Mask Up India, where we're requesting each and every one of you to wear your mask as you step out of the house. As we wind up the show and we head out of the studios, we are going to get our mask on while we move on. So you should not forget to mask yourself up till you get vaccinated, because remember, this is your only fight. This is your only frontier in protecting yourself against the virus.
But even after you get vaccinated, it's a very important, it's a very important tool that you must follow. Wear mask, practice social distancing, and ensure health hygiene. So it's a simple task. Just wear your mask. And before we do it for ourselves, we're in fact leaving you with the glimpses of ongoing winter sports festival in Ladakh's Zanskar. Take a look there. Wish you a great day ahead. Take good care of yourself. Stay healthy and stay safe. Thanks for being with us.